So today's webinar is presented by Sue Beats and Caroline Smith. Sue is the General Manager of AWPA and has held this role since the establishment of Skills Australia in April 2008. Prior to her current role, she was involved in government administration and has a total of 20 years' experience in education and employment issues. Dr. Caroline Smith is the Director of Skills and Workforce Development Policy at AWPA. She's leading the agency's project on a national workforce development strategy and improving innovation and well-being through better utilisation of skills. So before we hand over to our presenters for today, I'd just like to conduct a brief poll to get to know you all a little bit better and also get you familiar with the technology. So in a moment, you should see the poll open up on your screen, and you'll see the question is, what is the biggest challenge in your workplace? Now, you'll notice that there are 5 options there. So we have A, being productivity, B, being staff turnover, C, skills shortages, D, improving innovation, and E, improving profitability. So if you just want to choose the answer that best represents your answer, and then if you also have any additional comments, feel free to type into the messages box and we can see those coming through. And I can see the responses coming through quite quickly, so there's some great responses there. And this will also help our presenters in getting to know you all a little bit better and then tailoring the presentation to yourselves. So from what I can see, we have probably about half the people responding so far, so if you want to keep those coming through. And now I'm going to close them and then share the results with everybody so you can see. And as you can see, it tends to be more A and D, but if I can hand over to you, Sue, and get your thoughts on that.
Thanks, Sarah. Well, look, it is interesting that we've got such a broad range there across the various challenges, but productivity, good to see, and I suppose innovation, and we certainly see that innovation is one of the key ingredients in terms of productivity, so I guess that also reflects people's feelings about that being one of the major challenges. But I might we'll get into the issues of productivity, obviously, and innovation more as we go through the seminar today. But I might just start by way of introduction in terms of the Australian Workforce and Productivity Agency and our role. So the agency is an independent expert board that provides advice to government on Australia's current and future skill needs and also on the country's and the national workforce development needs. And we provide that advice to Minister Chris Evans, so at a Commonwealth or federal government level. The board itself very much brings an industry perspective to the advice that it provides to government. We have a very good cross-section of industry representatives from business, small business, large business, unions, and also people who will bring a state government perspective, which is useful in terms of getting that regional feel in the national work that we do. Look, the board's interest in this research arises because there's very significant investment currently being made in tertiary education by government, and really we want to ensure that as well as providing a greater supply of skills out there in the community, we also use those skills effectively. And our research has found that 30% of employers report that their workers are overqualified for the jobs that they're doing, and similarly 40% of employees report that their skills are not being used in the workplace. So potentially there's a very significant waste of people's ability, but also that can lead to great frustration to people, both from an employer and employee perspective. And so that's what kind of sparked our interest in this, and the reason why we've undertaken some research, because we feel that there is a real need to provide a sort of how-to in terms of going about improving productivity in workplaces. So I'll now hand over to Caroline Smith, who is taking the lead on this work. So over to you, Caroline.
Thanks very much, Sue. Just to give a bit of a background to the organisations that we approached to help us out with this research. We spoke to 11 organisations across Australia, and I think it's really important to recognise just the diversity of the industries that these organisations are in. And so as diverse as manufacturing, health, resources, construction, and the not-for-profit sector, just to name a few. And I think the other really useful thing to note is that these organisations are in small, medium and large sizes, so real diversity there as well. And so in conducting this research, we went around the country and did quite detailed research. We visited the organisations involved and spoke to a range of people from employees on the shop floor to people at the chief executive level, which was a really valuable way of getting a range of views of just how these organisations are making the most of the skills of their workforce. So just really to set out by covering what we're looking to address today quickly in the webinar. So we'll be talking about uncovering the full range of skills and talents in your organisation, how to make your workplace one that encourages the better use of skills, why you should do it, and how we're looking to be doing this. We're really showcasing some of the organisations that we spoke to in undertaking this research. But first, I think it's just important to touch on what we actually mean by skills utilisation. So I've got a definition up there that we use, but I think it's really important to focus on the fact that this is really about developing and applying skills in the workplace context and in a way that has positive outcomes for the organisation, but also for employees as well. So these kinds of strategies have the real potential to be a win-win. As we go through the presentation, I will, as I said, talk about the organisations that we spoke to, but I wanted to kick off really by outlining why better using the skills of the workforce is a good, what are the benefits to organisations in doing this. And I'll talk in a bit more detail about improving innovation, productivity and staff turnover shortly. And it's really good to see that those are some of the themes coming out in the key issues that you're talking about in your workplaces. But just to give one example from the organisations we spoke to, Pottinger is an independent financial and strategic advisory firm, and they have the objective of expanding their business and also attracting and retaining some really good talent to be able to do that. And so the way that Pottinger undertakes their work is to really give staff a great opportunity to be building the business and be involved in the strategic direction and give their ideas and come up with innovative ways of approaching the business. And so some of the outcomes that they've seen from that has been over a 3-year period, they've been able to, they moved from just having a single client to having multiple clients, and they've been able to see their repeat business increase 5-fold in the last 3 years. So they see a real advantage to the strategies that they use in their workforce. Some of the other quite notable examples as well, RSPCA in Victoria, the not-for-profit sector, actually has seen their work cover premiums be cut from around about 800,000 each year to around about 150,000. And I'll talk later about how they did that. Other companies that we've seen have improved the safety of their workforce as well. And also a really important thing that came through in doing the research was improving the job satisfaction of the staff involved, which we see as being really important in terms of reducing staff turnover and retaining people in the workforce. To talk about in more detail, what do we mean by skills utilisation practices? So this slide talks about some of the key strategies that we saw the organisations involved in the research undertake. Another example I'll talk about a bit in more detail later was some Murrumbidgee District Health organisation, and they redesigned the jobs of allied health assistants, which has had a real impact. And also Dexion, which I'll talk about in a moment, has also consulted employees in terms of how they should redesign some of the the roles as well. Employee participation, getting employees involved in the direction of the business, or even something as simple as how work should be undertaken on a particular day. Getting the feedback on is the task being undertaken in the best way that's possible? Is it being undertaken as safely as possible? And some of the sorts of ways asking employees about their views on those types of issues has had some real benefits for the organisations that we spoke to. Autonomy, giving employees some discretion over how they do their job, and some opportunity to shape their own work and have some discretion there has also been an important strategy in some of the organisations. Knowledge transfer. Now, to break that down a little bit, that on the one hand means transferring knowledge between employees through mentoring, and we saw that happen very commonly in the organisations, both formally and informally. So GHD, which is a consulting firm, has a formal program that they call Peer Assist, and that's where older workers rotate around the organisation, putting them in a position to really share the wealth of the experience that they have. We've got skills audits up there. Now, that's often a precursor to introducing skills utilisation strategies, and also really important in terms of workforce planning. And so Leighton Contractors, New South Wales, ACT and New Zealand, as part of their work in the Kempsey Bypass Alliance in northern New South Wales, they implemented a work breakdown strategy where they assessed the skills that were needed for the jobs that were coming up, but also having a look at where the staff are available in the business to be able to deliver the projects. And so looking internally to see what capabilities were available, but also looking at the local labour market as well to see where people can be drawn in from the local labour market, and they saw some really great benefits from that kind of approach. Job rotation is another commonly used strategy in the organisations we spoke to, and Woodside really have quite an innovative approach that they call skill tools, and it's an approach that they use across the organisation where they, on an occupational basis, develop up and rotate staff around the organisation so that they've really got a line of sight to career development opportunities within the organisation. So that's really about encouraging people to join Woodside in the first place, but importantly to stay in the organisation in what's obviously the resources sector very competitive in terms of wages. So that's a few examples there of the types of strategies that we mean. I wanted to talk to you in a bit more detail about one of the manufacturing companies that we spoke to, Dexion, which are a medium-sized manufacturing company, and really facing competitive pressures and economic challenges. Now, Dexion, amongst the products that they produce are some of the shelving that you see in some major supermarkets, just to give you a bit of a perspective there. And so, through the economic downturn that happened, so the global financial crisis, increasing competition from producers overseas, Dexion really have seen a need to improve the way that they do their business. And so they worked with local TAFE to deliver work-integrated learning that they had delivered on the work site and was available to any staff that wanted to participate in the training. And I think what was really interesting about this is that the training was designed in a way that people that had the opportunity to really practice the skills that they were learning back on the job. And I recall an example from there that the operator of one of the paint lines through this process had an idea that has been able to save Dexion $400 or $500 a shift just by making a fairly small change to how the work on the paint line was organised. And also in Dexion, there's been some changes in processes introduced, and the staff have been involved in designing how that work should actually occur to encourage ownership of their role, but also, to make sure that, the changes have been implemented in a way that, it's been very workable to have that in place. And so, for example, when a new integrated machine was introduced, combining both welding and roll forming, the welding team was involved in the design of that entire process. And so that's just one snippet, I guess, of the outcomes and for Dexion and the processes that they undertook. But they've really also seen some very measurable improvements in productivity. So, for example, they saw wastage rates reduce over a couple of years, so down to 2.3%, down 0.5%, better staff morale, better job satisfaction, and an improvement in trust between management and staff. And that was really visible from the site visit that we did, that that there was really good workplace relationships there. So in thinking about what triggers organisations to undertake these kinds of strategies, probably the strongest example in the research that we did was responding to challenges in the labour market. And so issues around needing to improve staff retention, being able to attract staff into the organisation and keep them was probably really the most commonly a commonly acknowledged reason for looking to introduce skills utilisation strategies. Others were around product market competition, and so this is, I guess, looking more towards innovation and doing things better, expanding the business as well. So improving products and processes, reducing wastage, and really where this was seen to be important as well was where the organisation was looking to be competing on the basis of quality rather than price. That was quite an important factor as well. The economic conditions, and this is really particularly in the manufacturing organisations, but not entirely, but the real pressure points for many of the organisations were around economic conditions, responding to international competition, and also, as I've alluded to, promoting growth and innovation. So there were quite a number of organisations who are either, at a point of wanting to expand the business, and I'll give some examples in a moment where you can really see that there were some fantastic outcomes that were of really important benefit to what the organisations were trying to achieve. So I've touched on RSPCA Victoria already, but I want to talk about that in a little bit more detail. RSPCA very much relies on the donations from sponsors to be funding and supporting the care of the animals that come into the RSPCA. But they're really faced with limited resources, and there's always been a real focus in the organisation of and I guess an expectation of many of the donors that the money that's provided goes to the animals. And so a new chief executive came on board in RSPCA Victoria who really recognised that to be able to properly care for the animals, you really need to have the workforce to be as well trained as possible, and for the work to be organised in a way that really improves those outcomes for the animals. So RSPCA also had quite high staff turnover, and because of a fairly high number of injuries, they actually had quite high work cover premiums as well. And in an organisation with such limited resources, in particular, this was a major challenge for them. And so with work cover premiums at around $800,000, that's a really significant cost to the business. So RSPCA thought about how to do things differently, and so they redesigned some of the job roles, and in particular, the example I'll talk about is the senior animal senior animal care assistants, and they had their jobs changed around. So they were people who were employed by the RSPCA. RSPCA obviously also has a lot of volunteers as well. But these are employees who they've been around for a while, quite experienced, so their job roles were redesigned so that they would take on a greater management role, so sort of frontline supervisor position, so that they could free up some of the time of some of the more senior staff, but also provide some real hands-on support to volunteers and some of the newer paid staff members as well. But one of the challenges that RSPCA Victoria found was that while the job roles had changed, in effect the staff kind of kept on doing things the way they really always had. They hadn't been trained for the new role, and so therefore they kept on doing what they were more familiar with. And so the RSPCA in Victoria looked at how they could reshape some of their training funds. They actually had a training scholarship that they made available to a staff member every year, but in consultation with the donor, they changed that around and made it a more collective use of those training funds. So they sent those frontline managers onto a training course. They established a mentoring program as well. And so those workers became much more confident in doing in the new job that they'd been asked to do. And so that's just one example of the types of things that's been going on in RSPCA Victoria. But the new managers, they really encourage their staff to share their views about ways of doing things better. It's had an impact in terms of how well the animals are cared for, different ideas around care that have saved the lives of more animals. And it's also, from an organisational point of view, improved staff retention and also reduced the work cover premium, and it's around about $150,000 a year, which is a really big drop from $800,000. So that's a really, I think, a really interesting example of just the kinds of differences that making better use of the skills of the workforce and developing the skills as well, and giving the opportunity for those skills to be used in practice can make. So to talk a bit further about some of the benefits around skills utilisation strategies, I wanted to talk a bit more about staff retention. And this is really an outcome that all of the organisations identified as occurring in some way. And for some of the organisations we spoke to, this was really a key objective of what they were looking for. And many of the organisations also found that there's a virtuous cycle in improving staff retention. So better staff retention improves morale, which in turn reinforces staff retention. It's a bit of a positive feedback loop. But the example I wanted to give here is a company working out of Western Australia, set up as a small organisation, but probably now considered to be medium sized through expansion. And it's an organisation that works in technology, in providing geology software that supports the resources sector. Now, they need quite highly trained staff that have got IT skills but also geology skills, and so they're sort of competing in a fairly narrow labour market, I guess, for staff, and they compete with the resources sector, and who are obviously able to pay quite well. And so this company Acquire, they've got a range of different mechanisms in place to really try and retain their staff. They encourage ideas and innovation. They've got an online tool that they use to do that. It's called Novedad, which any Spanish speakers would know that means new ideas. And so that's their online mechanism for doing that. And the ideas can be as simple as creating a new system for recognising the leave of people who've been around for a while, and other sorts of ideas are a bit more strategic and longer term. So another example of what they do is they are very conscious of because retention being such a big focus for Acquire, they really want to know what's going on with their workforce in terms of how satisfied they are with their jobs. And so they've got what they call a job satisfaction calculator, which I think is a really innovative tool. And what that actually does, and they've got 5 different measures that they consider job satisfaction on, and one of those is how well skills are used in the workforce, or how well an employee feels that their skills are being used. And if the score is out of 100, and if the score is sort of any less than about 70 out of 100, that triggers a discussion to really, it's a recognition that it's an area for real improvement, and so therefore need to sit down and find a mechanism to address any challenges that there might be. And for Acquire, remembering that retaining their staff is they have been successful in that, and so they've got very low staff turnover at around 4%. So the organisation really see the strategies that they use to recognise the skills of their workforce and encourage the ideas, and they've also got a very all of this is underpinned by a very strong corporate culture. So they really see that blend of initiatives as being really important in terms of ensuring that the retention is as high as it is. Now, turning to another important benefit, and again, this is the one that we saw that the 20% of you that responded to our little poll at the start said that was a key challenge. Now, innovation, we found in really commonly across the organisations that we spoke to, and this is an important bridge to productivity as well, organisations knowing the existing capabilities and of the staff and looking to develop those further can lead to better ways of working, better ways of doing things, being more innovative in terms of processes and practices, and then those having important benefits as well. So in terms of innovation, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Chia Company, which is quite a small company working in the food production sector. So some of you may have heard of chia seeds, and the Chia Company is the largest producer of chia seeds in the world. They work directly with a lot of farmers to be producing chia seeds in Australia. And so as a small organisation, they took some time to develop up production in Australia of chia seeds, and then really looked to then build the business and expand the company. And as part of that, the Chia Company has a real strong ethical philosophy around health and wellness and ethical practice in business as well. And so they really sought to engage more skilled people that were aligned with those really strong corporate values. And so it's a very flat structure. The managing director has a real philosophy that anyone in the business can have important ideas and can contribute to the direction of the business. They've got a open office plan, and a very transparent kind of way of doing business. They very much share information about how the company is doing very freely with the staff that are there, and really have a number of approaches in place that really facilitates and encourages the staff to come up with ideas for the business. And that's really seen sales and profitability in the early years of this growing business expand quite notably. So, and the company really do recognise just how important their people have been in all of that process through this developmental phase, and then building on that to expand further. Now, productivity is another important aspect of an outcome of skills utilisation. I've talked already about how Dexion have improved their productivity through better using the skills of their workforce, and some of the types of outcomes in terms of improved productivity can be around time saving, improving quality, increased output, and so some of the other organisations that we spoke to, such as Holden Manufacturing, they had some of these outcomes in terms of productivity. But I really wanted to talk to you about an organisation in the health sector that also saw productivity improvements, and they have quite a different way of considering productivity. And so Murrumbidgee Local Health District is a health organisation in country New South Wales, and they introduced a strategy which was to redesign the jobs of allied health assistants, which freed up the professional workers, but gave a lot more autonomy, a lot more responsibility to the allied health assistants. And people in those roles were previously assistants that were, that didn't have a particular qualification level. So the training that they've undertaken has in some ways recognised existing skills of working in those roles, but also has developed new skills and really given a lot more opportunities for those staff to have autonomy and to have some discretion in how they do their work. So for example, allied health assistants are now able to be much more involved in the care plans of patients once the professionals have sort of set out the plan, and they can actually go out and on care sites or care visits without having a professional kind of with them to be monitoring and providing care that's needed. But and in productivity in this sense is really about delivering client-focused services against administration costs. And so just as an example there, redesigning the allied health assistance role, giving an example from Deniliquin, having allied health assistants in place has actually reduced the waiting time for dietetic appointments from 2 months to under 2 weeks, which is obviously a massive improvement in terms of productivity, which in this case, refers to, improving the responsiveness and quality of the service for patients, which is fantastic. So moving us on, just in summary really to start to bring some of this together. So using skills to encourage innovation and productivity. So it's about encouraging employees and giving employees the opportunity through things like how jobs are designed, asking for the opinions of employees, asking for input into business direction and strategy, or how to do things more safely in a construction environment, or and also sharing of existing knowledge through mentoring, as well as things like multi-skilling, job rotation. So those kinds of strategies can lead to innovation, and so really giving the opportunity for enhancing innovation, but also then with the potential to improve process and products in the workplace. So skills, innovation, productivity, very much in alignment in using these kinds of strategies. And the organisations that we spoke to, they were all quite different in how they went about things, and there was no sort of one best way of doing things. But there are a lot of commonalities in terms of the types of strategies used, some of the reasons why the strategies were undertaken, and and some of the different outcomes that were achieved.
We've had a question on the line about how do you manage staff reactions when productivity improvements are raised. And the example that's been given in that company is about implementing a new database, which objective is to reduce admin tasks, but obviously those changes and bringing about something new can create stress for people. I mean, I remember the allied health example as being one whereby before any changes were made there, the professional staff who were involved in that change were all brought together, and it was, sort of starting with on almost a clean slate, talking to them about how they could be freed up from the bits of their job that, you know, was not ever what they signed up for, I suppose, you know, the time that they took travelling, et cetera, and very much engage them in the process of how they could improve the service that they deliver, and that be a more satisfying job for them too. Do you have other examples, you know, beyond that kind of engaging staff very early in the process and getting them to share in terms of improvements? From your examples, do you have other ways that employees have engaged staff to help bring them along with the change and the productivity improvements?
I think this goes to, you know, what makes skills utilisation strategies work, and so being able to you know, recognise that change is challenging for people, and you know that it is important to be engaging with the staff and to be as transparent as possible about the reasons for change. I mean, I would say that, you know, Holden is obviously an organisation that's faced a lot of challenges and change, and so working through the structure they're working with the trade unions on the site, I think, was another mechanism to helping kind of dealing with some of the challenges there. But as a sort of overarching, I guess, theme, you know, we found in the research that, you know, forward planning as much as possible, letting people know kind of what's happening and why, having an opportunity to give that feedback, and, you know, air their concerns. You know, try not to let there be too many elephants in the room, I guess, was quite important. And so they were probably some of the really important things in terms of, you know, enabling change in this way.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I'm conscious of time here, so I'll talk through this next example on the screen sort of quite quickly. I've touched on GHD a little bit already, but what I think is quite interesting, so GHD are a consultancy company. They also wanting to attract and retain very talented people, and I've spoken already about their, you know, how they mentor through a peer assist program that rotates older workers around the organisation, but they also very much use IT as a mechanism to be developing new ideas. So they have a system that they call Innovation Central, and it's an online tool that any staff, and GHD operates globally. That's an Australian company that now has about 6,000 employees across the world. Half of those are in Australia. And so through this mechanism of having an online innovation forum, workers can put ideas out there, and it doesn't have to be sort of through their existing line management kind of processes to be able to put their idea out there. They can actually put this idea out to all of the employees that are engaged in Innovation Central. I think that's about half of GHD staff are involved. So they put out an idea. Other workers around the world have the opportunity to respond to those ideas and develop it up. And so that approach has seen some new business ideas that have then been translated into you know, actual kind of products and different strategies and, you know, different outcomes that GHD have been able to use successfully in their business. And, you know, this again is sort of part of an overall culture that GHD are looking to, you know, to be as open and inclusive as they possibly can, again, really with the aim of retaining talented people. And again, they feel that these strategies that they've used have been very successful. So this slide really is to be recapping. So giving employees freedom and authority to make decisions is a practical strategy that we've seen. It can help to improve innovation in particular, which obviously leads to productivity and other positive outcomes. involving employees in decision making, and whether that be in terms of business strategy or whether it's what's happening on a work site that can help improve safety. Rotating employees through different jobs, roles and positions to give them different experiences and keep the work interesting for them. Redesigning jobs to make sure skills of employees are used as best they can. Offer training that's relevant and can be practically applied back in the workplace. And organise for experienced workers to mentor and pass on their skills and knowledge to others. I've talked a bit already about Murrumbidgee Health, but and Sue has flagged this as well. So I think just really to highlight here that it was a highly consultative process that Murrumbidgee Health undertook to redesign and expand the role of aides into the allied health assistants, and it's really made the jobs and career pathways much more interesting for certainly for the assistants, but also the professionals as well, because it's freed up their capacity to also improve their own jobs as well. So, for example, I'm aware that some of the professionals that have been involved in had allied health assistants working for them, it's given them more time to undertake mentoring and training and other opportunities to be developing up their own professional skills and knowledge, which I think is another important angle of this particular case study.
Caroline, I know you've gone through some of the practicalities. We had a specific question about strategies that CHEER implemented, and you have talked to facilitate free information flow and to support staff to put their ideas forward. You talked a bit about the culture that supports that. What are the really practical things as well that just enable people to get their ideas up the chain, maybe go round some of the blockages that might normally occur? Do you want to just maybe give us a bit on some real practicalities there that people could implement back in their own workplaces?
I think in a small organisation like CHEER, it's really, you turn around from one side of your desk to the other and talk to the person that's sitting next to you. So I think in some ways that kind of open communication is in some ways potentially it's easier, but I think in terms of being able to facilitate that kind of innovation in other examples, we've seen Holden, for example, have got a system in place where people are rewarded for putting ideas in place. So people have come up with a new way of doing something, and the reward is related to, I guess, the value of the idea for the company. So other ideas as well is actually recognising people when they have a good idea, and whether that's recognising people through an award or a recognition for a team through a team barbecue or lunch, those sorts of things. And again, we've seen a couple of those really quite innovative approaches of using online tools to provide ideas as well. And I think in terms of circumventing kind of usual kind of chains of command, or having a different way of approaching things, certainly the GHD example of having their innovation central, I think, is a really fantastic example there, because the way that operates by, the ideas go out there, everyone who's signed up can see the ideas, and the idea, whether or not an idea goes ahead, is actually decided by an independent kind of group of employees that are not necessarily working in the part of the business that the idea has come from. So that's been a way of really developing some really creative ideas that's sort of outside usual structures of the organisation.
Okay, great, thanks.
And I think, we're really at this point in the discussion, and some of the questions that are coming through, thinking about critical success factors in making skills utilisation work. And so we really saw that there were 5 factors that enable these kinds of strategies to work and be successful in workplaces. And probably one of the really core things is the role of leaders and managers in organisations. And so encouraging creativity and innovation, doing what you say you're going to do, delivering on promises, we found to be a really important critical success factor. Developing middle and line managers, frontline managers, to understand the skills of their workforce, but also to feel comfortable in taking ideas of staff as well, and not seeing that as sort of too much of a challenge. As we've talked about already, forward planning and strategies to be managing change, which I guess then goes to one of the other critical success factors, which is around the culture of the organisation. And so all of these sort of critical success factors, I don't think you could just have one of these in place and working well to be really successful. What we found is that there was, these range of different enablers were operating to make this work. So I think, encouraging staff to share their ideas, they need to be encouraged to do that and feel that sort of putting forward a different view is going to be accepted and it's going to be okay. And so that's about supportive, inclusive workplaces, encouraging the sharing of ideas. It's also related to communication, and so actively listening to the ideas that staff have, taking them seriously. Transparency of information we also found to be important as well. Staff felt a part of the business. They felt valued when they had information that wasn't being made available to them. And that's not to say that sort of absolutely everything is always going to be available to everyone. It very much is sort of horses for courses. But a really important theme was transparency and involving everyone, different stakeholders, whether that be sort of staff groups or unions, or who else are the other, who are the important people there, and so information provided to staff is really important. But I guess the other side is feedback coming upwards is incredibly important too, and so mechanisms around consulting with staff and having different structures in place was important. Good HR practice we felt to be a requirement to make good skills utilisation strategies work, but not enough on their own. So flexible working was quite common across the organisations, and also recognising and rewarding the efforts of staff was also an important kind of part of all of this. And I guess thinking about the employee side of the equation, an important part of the mix is motivated employees. And so while we didn't feel that one size would fit all, having valued employees who feel valued and recognised, we found would be more willing to contribute their ideas and be more innovative and creative in how they approach their work. So before I hand over to Sue for the last few slides, we had another quick on-screen poll that we were hoping to get from you, and I think that Sarah was going to bring that in.
Great. As you can see, everybody, there's another poll that's up on the screen. So this one is, which of these practices is most common in your workplace? And once again, if you can just respond with the answer that suits you best. And as usual, if you have any comments, feel free to type them in the messages box. Great. And we've got about half of the people responding so far. And Caroline, there seems to be an overwhelming response for one particular one.
Well, that's interesting.
It's starting to equal out now, though. Is there usually a common response with this sort of question?
Look, I think in terms of the research we did, probably employee participation and mentoring would have been the two most commonly used strategies.
Okay.
So
well, I'll share
to see what we get now.
There we go.
Okay. So autonomy has come out in front. Great. All right, So with that, I'll turn to Sue to be covering off the next areas.
Okay, thanks, Caroline. Look, I suppose as previously mentioned, government is concerned about this issue because there is this significant investment that's currently occurring in relation to tertiary education and skills. And so we want to ensure that it's not just more skills, but also how those skills are used. And as you would be aware, productivity is of concern to government. The productive capacity of our economy is something that underpins and very much funds our quality of life. And when we look at the next slide, you can see that over the past decade, Australia has that's the one. Over the last decade, Australia's experienced a flattening trend in terms of productivity, and this is after being a world leader in productivity growth in the 1990s. But it seems that since about 2003-04, Australian productivity growth, the growth rate declined to a level that was no better than what we'd been achieving in the 60s. And so this is a focus. It's something that government's concerned about in terms of our national well-being, but we also understand that the way that you deliver a lot of productivity improvement or opportunities for that is very much in workplaces. So this is something that is sitting in the hands of employers, industry, enterprises. If we have a look at the next slide, this reflects some research that's been commissioned by the Department of Innovation and reflected in a report called Management Matters. And this research looked at or picked up on work that the London School of Economics had undertaken, and they designed a methodology to measure management practices. Now, this is very much in manufacturing firms, and the results that we see here for Australia is based on manufacturing firms and allows that international comparison. But these firms were assessed on their management practice across 18 different dimensions in the areas of operations management, performance management, and people management. And as a positive thing, I guess, the results did find that Australia performs around the global average on most of these comparators. But what we see is that relative to operations management performance, Australia is not as strong on its people management. So we're much better at operations management than we are at people management. And this research has found that this is an area that Australia needs to do better on, particularly in terms of the retention of our staff, improving our innovative capacity and performance through that people management focus. And if we move to the next slide, you can see that, and this research found that the top performing countries, which are the US and Sweden, are also among the top 4 competitive economies in the world. And so from that, they take that we have an indication that improving management performance is a key opportunity for longer term sustainable growth for Australia. And I guess that's where we're focusing our guide on the how-to that other companies have undertaken and is in our research booklet, is really to give some ideas to companies so as that they can pick up these initiatives and implement them in their own workplaces. As I say, we see that that's where the opportunities are. So I guess just really to summarise, we think the steps are really understanding what your business needs, where it's heading, what's required in order to improve your business capability. And for some enterprises out there, you might find business advisory services such as Enterprise Connect would help to do that initial analysis. We've talked a lot today about skills and capabilities in the workplace, both understanding what you've currently got there and allowing people to bring their skills and capability to the fore to address the problems that you might be facing or enable you to offer a much better service to your customers. it's not only about skills, but certainly all about capabilities. And so this is something that we think it's a good idea to understand what you've already got there, and developing your employees through training and mentoring if that's what's required. Again, if you want to look at job redesign, ensuring that your most qualified people are focusing on the areas that really demand their professional skills, that might require some job redesign, and getting them on board to assist that to happen, but also ensuring that the people that they or the people around them are well equipped to take on the new job and the new shape of that job. And I guess, very strong message today about employees' ability to take that autonomy, and it was very positive to see that so many companies are already using that mechanism, and involve those employees in the decisions that need to be taken to improve productivity and bring forward innovative ideas, new ways of doing things. It doesn't all have to be big bang. That lots of productivity improvements are made through this, just small improvements along the way. And in terms of more information, we have a booklet which is available on our website, but also we'd be very happy to send it to you if you wish to have a copy of this. And it goes through in more detail the case studies that Caroline outlined today, the challenges that each of these companies were facing, how they've addressed those, some of the strategies, techniques, practical initiatives that they've brought, and also outlines the benefits to those companies. So we hope that gives a bit more of a guide on how to improve productivity and innovation within your workplaces. And just like to, with that, say thank you very much. That concludes our formal presentation. We can stick around for a little longer to answer any other questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you, Sue and Caroline. And that brings us to the end. So 2 o'clock on the dot. We do have a question that we're going to get to now, and if anyone would like to stay on the line to ask a few more questions or to hear the responses, please feel free to. Otherwise, for the rest of you who do need to take off, please feel free to exit the conference by clicking on the exit button on the top right-hand corner. You will then be redirected to the online survey. So as discussed earlier, if you do complete the survey and provide us with your feedback, you will actually receive a recording within 48 hours of the presentation. Please select if you would like to receive those case studies, and they'll be sent to you. So on behalf of Redback Conferencing, I'd like to thank both Caroline and Sue from the AWPA. It's been a pleasure, and it's also been a very enlightening and valuable presentation, as I'm sure you'll all agree. So right now, I'll hand it back over to Sue. I can see we've got another question down the bottom from Tanya. She's talking about the research and who needs to be involved in the workforce planning.
Okay, look, I think our research would say that leadership and management is very important in terms of driving any changes that happen in an organisation. But similarly, having the staff involved is important. So you need that willingness from the top in terms of the culture of the organisation that will facilitate this kind of approach. But then, of course, you need everyone on board and encouraging that. And so it doesn't just have to be from HR. The examples from our small companies where they don't have HR units, it's very much coming from, the management of that company, seeing the issues and getting their staff on board to help address those issues. It can be around HR, but I wouldn't say it has to be.
So I'd just add to that by saying that in some of the larger organisations that we spoke to, HR were working in very close partnership with operations managers and those on the on the kind of frontline side of the business in terms of the products and processes and services. And that was an important kind of collaboration and partnership in those organisations.
Great. That seems to be all the questions we have coming through now. So I'll just like to hand it over to Sue to wrap it up. And thanks everyone for joining today.
Okay, well, yeah, I'd just again like to add my thanks. We know that you take time out of your busy day and given up lunchtime to be here, so I hope that you found it useful. And if you have any other further questions, please feel free to contact us via our website. Also, just a bit of shameless plug for our conference, which you can see there is on the 3rd and 4th of October, The Future of Work. We've got a lot of fantastic speakers, and we will have quite a focus on this issue of skills utilisation, productivity and innovation at the conference. So you'll see more information about our conference as well on the website if you'd like to look into that too.
Excellent. Thanks everyone for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.